Let's talk about codependent behavior. Let's talk about codependency, how it affects our sense of self, how it affects the quality of our relationships, how it affects the way we think about who we are, how it affects the way we treat ourselves and, of course, treat others. Codependency is essentially us seeking for validation and approval and love and affection and care well outside of ourselves. That means that we are dependent on how others see us, how they feel us, how they understand us, their perception of us. If they think we are quote unquote good or bad, if we're healthy or unhealthy, what they think of us determines how we feel about ourselves, our sense of self. How others perceive us, how others think about us determines our sense of well-being, our sense of, are we happy with ourselves? Are we happy with the world? We become a slave to something we cannot control. We become a slave to someone else's ideals and beliefs about who we are and who we should be. Now, where does this pattern or these patterns of behavior come from? I'm also going to give you some real examples of how they play out in our world today as well. I'm going to put my hand straight up. I'm going to put my hand up and I'm going to say that I had, and probably still do in various respects, behavior around being codependent. In fact, most of us will. Now, if we look at attachment theory actually says that most of us, more than 50% of us, just slightly, we have a healthy sort of attachment style, which affects our sense of self. We feel that we can derive a sense of self. We feel good about ourselves from ourselves. We don't rely and we're not hyper dependent on others for that. Now, if you're anything like me, you grew up in a difficult environment, difficult family environment. I grew up in violence, aberrance, and volatility and emotional abuse, physical abuse, witnessing that between my parents, conflicting ideas of what love was, that being also pushed onto me, but then also from the same person that was hurting me, my parents. I was also receiving care and affection from them, and it was very confusing. And from a very young age, because we're pleasure-seeking beings, we seek joy. And so I figured out that if I were to feel better about myself, if I make others happy, or if I minimize myself and maximize them, people please, in this sense, I would be able to get recognition and approval from the people that I cared about a lot, the people that I deified, because we do that as children. We deify our parents. We make them gods. We believe that they are everything. And if we don't let go of that belief at some point during our development, we hang on to that and it transfers into our adult relationships. And we lose ourselves. See, codependency is losing yourself. It's making someone else's purpose yours, or even more important than what you are here to do and be. Or simply put, even your expression, someone else's expression is more important, carries greater weight and value than yours. And so as a young child, I learned that if I maximized others and their needs, then I wouldn't be hit or I wouldn't be hurt. And so this became a pattern for me. Now, as I grew up during my teenage years, I almost combusted. It became so intense that I had to release. And so the way I released was being violent in the world, which was basically doing what I was exposed to, what I was familiar with. And so I started then relying on others seeing me as this strong individual, this tough man, this guy that wouldn't take any shit. And all of a sudden my value was in that. My value was in how cool could I be? And whatever I defined as cool based on the peers that I was with. And so there was always an element of people pleasing. It just sort of transmuted into something that was more aggressive and more overt. Still seeking myself in others. Seeking myself in the validation and approval of others, whether it was my parents, whether it was my peers, whether it was society. Even if I was rebelling, which I did a lot of, because I was so constricted as a kid, My voice was so constricted. I grew up very young as a kid, feeling I had to look after my grandparents, my parents, my brother, and so I was very constricted. And so all of these different elements of my life experiences and self fed into being codependent, relying on how I thought others saw me to validate my sense of self-worth. And I wasn't worthy enough unless I had the approval of those that I perceived that mattered to me. And so maybe when you're working, you have a job and you have peers, colleagues in that job, and you are a perfectionist, so you're someone that strives for success and strives to be the best. Where is the come from there? Where's that really coming from? That need to be the best, to impress your boss, to impress your colleagues. Where's it coming from? Is it coming from a genuine yearning to simply explore your capacity and your creativity? Or is it coming from a place of wanting to make others see you as someone that is of great worth because you have a wound or an emptiness within you, a void within you that you're filling? In intimate relationship, are you prioritizing the needs of your partner and sacrificing your own and developing maybe a resentment or a frustration around that? And where is the come from? Why are you doing that? Why are you minimizing your voice? Why are you not giving yourself a voice in relationship? Why are you not listening to who you truly are and then expressing that in the world? Why are you relying on others to make you feel better about you? Feel this for a moment. Just be with this just for a moment. Where in your life are you relying on the approval of others? Well done. Good on you. Great job. You did so well. Can you do better next time? Where are you trying to impress others and losing the essence or the sense of self that is you in that? Where are you seeking for others' validation? Them telling you how amazing you are. Maybe, even in more subtle ways, them not judging you. Where are you looking to try and make everybody happy? And be run off your feet. And in a sense, just completely lose yourself. Forget about who you truly are. Forget about what your needs are. Where are you asking, consciously or unconsciously, for someone to let you know that you're worthy through your actions, and your actions maybe are not your own? You know, codependency can be a really painful thing. Anytime I do deeper work into myself, anytime I delve into exploring who I truly am and start removing layers, you know, I get to a point in my life where, haven't I dealt with this shit? Haven't I taken care of this part of my life? Haven't I dealt with that past relationship and the wounding from that? How I showed up, how they treated me, how I behaved. Haven't I dealt with that? And the answer is, yeah, we deal with stuff, but there's layers. And you know what happens is the more that we open up to what's possible and the more we explore a particular wounding or pain point or fear or pattern that doesn't serve us anymore, the more layers that come from that. You know that saying, the more I know, I realize the less I know, or the more I know, I realize there's just so much more to know. And so it's that type of paradox. It's that type of entry point into the soul, into who we are. And so anytime I'm in a place of doing deeper work within myself and exploring and unpacking, old stuff comes up, but it's not the same stuff. It's a different version of that old stuff. It's layers. And in that, I can see sometimes my codependent behavior. You know, I'll give you an example. Not that long ago, when Christine and I first got together, I really noticed that I was coming in certain elements of our relationship. I was coming from fear. I was coming from desperation. I was trying to control how she was being in the relationship. I was trying to control the relationship. I was trying to control, you know, our practices, our daily or weekly love rituals, whatever they were. And I made it mean that if we didn't engage in those rituals, if we didn't engage in those practices, that maybe we're not meant to be together. Maybe she doesn't love me or she doesn't care for me. And then I would start to stress, well, what does it mean if she doesn't care about me or if she doesn't love me? Does that mean I'm unworthy? Does that mean I'm not worthy of love? Does that mean I'm broken? I'm not whole? But I thought I've done work around this. I thought I've moved into spaces and places of wholeness. I feel that, oh, hold on a minute. What do you mean I'm broken? So I had to unpack that. I had to go deeper into that. That was an expression of codependent behavior. Relying on her to feel better about myself, relying on how she treated me and how much time she spent with me or how much focus she put on our relationship to determine, oh, I must be worthy of this relationship. Now, what was happening at that time for me, I was doing a very purposeful, deliberate deep dive into my sexuality, into old wounding and removing some layers around that, going deeper into that place. And it brought up a lot of fear because I felt alone. I felt like I was the only person in the world. You know, sometimes when you go into this journey of self-development and you go into this journey of unpacking who you are, that a lot of stuff comes up around being alone and feeling isolated. Well, that's normal. That's very common when you're exploring shadow elements of self, darker parts of self. Not dark in necessarily an unhealthy way, just parts of self that you're not familiar with. And so sometimes that codependent, desperate behavior can come up. Now, there's a difference between being codependent and being relational, being dependent on each other in a healthy way, setting healthy boundaries, having agreements with each other, having agreements with, okay, this is how we're going to be in our relationship, and honoring those agreements. And when those agreements aren't honored, is expressing those in a healthy way and honoring yourself and communicating those in a healthy way. Not being judgmental, not being hypercritical, not being aggressive about that. Because again, that's revealing something deeper within you, maybe a trigger, maybe a part of you that you're not connected to, that you're not approving of, that you're not validating, that you're not revering and respecting. And so we place that burden on someone else. We can't do that. We can't control what others think of us, how they treat us. And we can't place that very heavy expectation of someone else, which is what I did for so long, of someone else to empower us, someone else to validate us and approve us and love us. And more often than not, codependency, not always, but can come from that father wounding of not having approval, not having the validation from that father figure, that father archetype, that father energy. And so I ask you, can you go into self and start to recognize the value that you hold, the intrinsic value that you carry every day in your communication, your expression, your ideologies, your beliefs, your interactions, how you treat yourself and how you treat others, and not rely on others to let you know how fucking good you are, how fucking amazing you are, but rather to hold that within yourself, to recognize that within yourself. Can you have a daily gratitude practice around, hey, this is what I honor and admire about who I am? Can you look at yourself in the mirror? And I had to do this for so long. Look at myself in the mirror and tell myself how worthy I was. Tell myself how much I loved myself and what I loved about myself and who I was and what was important to me, for me. And stop relying on others to do that for me. Because you know when we do that, when we rely on others to let us know how amazing we are, firstly, it's temporary. And secondly, we never take risks. We never jump outside of our comfort zone. We remain stagnant. We remain, quote unquote, ordinary within ourselves, not compared to someone else. And on that, we compare ourselves consistently to others and we remain stagnant. We don't choose to grow. And we don't choose to grow because we're fearful and we're scared of getting outside of our comfort zone. We're scared to realize that there's a big world out there and in here as well. And if we're relying on the validation of others that are in our close circle of influence to make us feel better about ourselves, we'll never escape that. We'll never leave that. And we'll remain stagnant in our progression through life. Now, there's so much more to say to codependency. So much more. So much more to say to the triggers as well. And this is what I'm going to say just now on this, is that codependency will limit you. It will restrict you and it will keep you in fear. It will also make you desperate and needy. And that's not attractive, especially if you're in your masculine energy. Being needy means you're not confident. When you're not confident, you lack self-respect and self-assurance. You lack direction. You rely on others to fill your voids. You rely on others to determine how to be purposeful in the world and how to be purposeful in your life. You rely on others to make decisions for you. That's not a healthy posturing, and it's not attractive. And so we lose and we lose and we lose, and we build resentment and frustration, and internally, physiologically, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, we are withering away at a very fast pace. And we become sick, and we become ill, and we become detached. I say this often, we lose ourselves. That means that we're not clear, and we're not clear on who and what we are in the world. Being codependent is limiting. Being codependent, it relieves us of autonomy and sovereignty. It relieves us of being decisive, and it relieves us of stepping into our gifts and our power and living in and from our hearts. We're always about satisfying others. Even if that doesn't align with us, those actions that we take don't feel good, we still do it to appease others. We're never really sovereign and whole, and we don't feel that way. So the opportunity is to step into interdependence, not codependence. When you're in a relationship, in an intimate relationship with someone that you value, is bringing your wholeness, and they bring their wholeness. And the wholeness is not severed, and you blend your wholenesses together. But you're not lost in that. It's not, oh, you make me whole, here's my half, here's your half. That's codependence. Here's my whole, here's your whole, and we're going to do this. And we're going to blend. And that part that blends is the third entity. That's the conscious relationship. Enough on that for now. Blessings on your journey. I'll see you again soon.